Nobody hates a Gallagher quite like another Gallagher, but that doesn't mean other musicians can't get in on the action. From pop sensations to the Beatles themselves, these are the stars who just can't stand Oasis. Radiohead frontman Thom Yorke has never been shy about expressing himself, and in a 1995 interview with London Calling, he didn't hesitate to offer his opinion when asked about Oasis, who at the time were relative newcomers on the music scene. Yorke said, "They're a joke, aren't they? It's just lots of middle-class people applauding a bunch of guys who act stupid and write really primitive music, and people say, 'Oh, it's so honest.' It's a freak show." Of course, the Gallaghers have voiced their own thoughts on Radiohead in a number of subsequent interviews. Most notably, Noel Gallagher absolutely trashed the band during a 2015 Esquire interview. He said, "Technically, there's better songwriters than I am. Have other people's songs ever really touched a generation, though? Radiohead? When do people listen to them?" He went on to say that he had given the band one more chance by checking out their Coachella set a few years prior, deciding once and for all that they were not for him as soon as Yorke started singing. Somewhat ironically, Yorke had long ago used the vocal skills so maligned by Gallagher to offer his definitive statement on Oasis. During a 1996 session for the CBC, Radiohead and members of the Posies broke out into an impromptu version of Wonderwall that saw Yorke doing his best, most mockingly nasal Liam Gallagher impression. Afterwards, he joked, "It's always good to make fun of Oasis." Keith Richards has been making music long enough to have earned the right to his opinion on any band in existence, and his opinion of Oasis is, well, unfavorable. In 1997, Richards famously and bluntly opined that the band was crap, and in the 2003 book The Rolling Stones, Off the Record, he was moved to elaborate. Speaking about the Gallagher brothers, he said, "These guys are just obnoxious. Grow up and then come back and see if you can hang. I don't hear anything there. It's all just retro to me." That same book quoted a belligerent response from Liam Gallagher, who seemed a little tired of his idols trashing his band. He said, "All these snakes coming out the closets, all these old farts, I will beat the living daylight out of them." That goes for Richards. I'll hold you up with a good right hook. During a more recent conversation with Absolute Radio, Gallagher recalled an encounter with Richards at a bar in the Bahamas that was slightly less antagonistic.
And he was like, "Yeah, your band, you were quite interesting there for a while." And I was like, I could actually say the same to you.
It's no secret that Oasis is musically indebted to the Beatles, to an even greater extent than any other rock band on Earth. There are Beatles references aplenty to be found in their tunes, references that tend toward the overt, with some consisting of simply dropping the titles of Beatles songs into their lyrics. They've also commented on the similarity directly, with Noel famously telling MTV in 1996 that Oasis were, in fact, bigger than the Beatles, a remark that he has since walked back, claiming he was high at the time. Then again, Liam told Little White Lies in 2016, "What we did in 3 years took the Beatles 8. It may not surprise you to learn that Sir Paul McCartney was never much for these comparisons. In 1997, at the height of Oasis' success, McCartney flatly stated that they were derivative and think too much of themselves. He added, "They mean nothing to me." McCartney revisited the subject in a 2016 interview with Q. He said, "I thought the biggest mistake they made was when they said, 'We're going to be bigger than the Beatles.' So many people have said that, and it's the kiss of death. The minute you say it, everything you do from then on is going to be looked at in the light of that statement." George Harrison also made his distaste for Oasis known on several occasions, and his criticisms may well have hurt the Gallagher brothers the most. Technically, the first solo album by a Beatle was a rather avant-garde 1968 LP by Harrison called Wonderwall Music, the soundtrack to a little-seen art film from that same year. That album title inspired Noel Gallagher to come up with a far more interesting title for Oasis' biggest hit, which he had written as Wishing Stone. Throughout the late 90s, however, Harrison slagged off the band in various interviews. He claimed that they were both uninteresting and outdated, but saved his harshest comments for Liam. Speaking with Independent Radio News in 1996, Harrison said, "I mean, he is just excess baggage, I think. All he does is make people think what a bunch of prannies they are." Liam, of course, was none too happy about this. Speaking with MTV News that same year, he said that while he still loved Harrison as a songwriter, he was less enamored with him as a person. Gallagher said, "It goes to show, all that time in the Beatles and all that stuff, that he's still stupid." The relationship between Oasis and their mid-90s Britpop peers Take That has always been a little complicated. Robbie Williams was buddies with Liam Gallagher for years, but the relationship turned sour when Noel, as is his wont, saw fit to publicly trash Williams by calling him the fat dancer from Take That. A not-so-friendly rivalry between the two bands ensued, with Williams taunting the Gallaghers over his band's success and publicly offering to fight Liam at the 2000 Brit Awards. In 2022, during a conversation with Apple Music, Williams went into detail about his distaste for Oasis.
It's like they were gigantic bullies too, to like the whole industry, everybody in it.
Yeah.
And I didn't like that.
While acknowledging that the brothers may have grown as people in the intervening years, Williams admitted that he found it hard to put his feelings about the pair behind them.
They're probably different people now, but there's a lot of me that's like, they're bullies, them.
Yeah.
I don't like bullies.
To his credit, and perhaps due to the fact that they were once friends, Liam Gallagher responded with a surprisingly thoughtful post on X, formerly Twitter. He wrote, "I've never bullied anyone in my life. I am a massive taker for sure, and probably gone a little too far sometimes, but if I've ever hurt anyone's feelings, I apologize." The British band Elastica only made a minor splash in the United States, but in the UK, they burned brightly, if only for a short time. Their self-titled 1995 debut album shot to #1 on the UK charts, and frontwoman Justine Frischmann managed to also become a staple of the tabloids by way of her romance with Damon Albarn, the frontman for Blur. Frischmann's problem with the Gallagher brothers was due to an unsurprising circumstance, a crude remark made about her in the press by Liam. It seems that the singer made a comment to the British mag Smash Hits along the lines of how he would not kick Frischmann out of bed for eating crackers, which perked her ears right up. In a subsequent interview, she said, "Next time I see Liam Gallagher, he's for it. I mean, I'd think he was being ironic if he wasn't so thick." Decades later, Frischmann demonstrated that her feelings about the Gallaghers had not changed. In response to a since-deleted 2016 tweet from Liam Gallagher that was widely considered to be homophobic, she responded simply, "Oasis and homophobia are both outdated." Scottish singer-songwriter Lewis Capaldi burst onto the scene in 2018 with his single Someone You Loved, which scored him a #1 US hit and a Grammy nomination. And he's done pretty well for himself in the intervening years. His second single, Before You Go, also cracked the top 10, pushing his debut album, Divinely Uninspired to a hellish extent, to double platinum status. His 2023 release, Broken by Desire to be Heavenly Sent, also yielded a Hot 100 single in Forget Me. These achievements, however, have failed to impress Noel Gallagher. In a 2019 interview with Radio X, the young singer was offered as an example of a talented modern artist from the UK. In response, Gallagher curtly dismissed Capaldi as an idiot. Soon after, Capaldi took to social media with a few comments of his own.
"It's Father's Day, and I'm being slagged off by a man who's old enough to my dad, and I've never been more happy."
A few days later, Capaldi wore a t-shirt emblazoned with Gallagher's face framed by a heart during a performance at Glastonbury, and later posed for a photo with Liam, with whom Noel was still bitterly feuding at the time. Noel shot back with a profane rant in which he inexplicably referred to Capaldi as Chewbacca, prompting Capaldi to make the famous Wookiee his profile picture on social media.
Slag off, but no Gallagher. What the day?
Kaiser Chiefs released their first album in 2005, and while they never made a huge splash stateside, they quickly became icons on the UK music scene. Noel Gallagher made enemies out of the band when he trashed them in the press in 2008. However, coming with an admittedly pretty sick burn during a conversation with the BBC, he said, "The Monkees haven't split up. They're just going under the name of the Kaiser Chiefs. I did drugs for 18 years, and I never got that bad as to say, you know what? I think the Kaiser Chiefs are brilliant." It didn't take long for a response from Chiefs drummer Nick Hodgson, who shrugged it off, calling the remarks a bit of sport, before noting that Oasis seemed to single out another band to insult every time they're about to put out a new album. He added, "When I was 17 and Noel was going on about Blur, I was watching it. And now I'm 30 and he's 50 and he's talking about us. It's brilliant. The following year, Chiefs guitarist Andrew White was not quite so gentle when asked about the previous exchange of disses. White said of Noel, "We have no time for him. Music is an art, but he doesn't appreciate music for what it is. It shows what a bitter old man he has become." Formed in the 1980s, the Stone Roses were a towering influence on the Britpop scene, and perhaps particularly on Oasis, as both bands hailed from Manchester. The Gallagher brothers have spoken openly about their admiration for the older band, and Liam Gallagher even formed a supergroup with Rose's John Squire, a partnership which produced the well-received album Just Another Rainbow in 2024. When it comes to Rose's frontman Ian Brown, though, the admiration is decidedly not reciprocated, and for a pretty understandable reason. The Stone Roses broke up in 1996 when Squire, whom Brown said had gotten heavily into cocaine, abruptly departed the band with nothing more than a phone call.
Would you ever get back together with the Stone Roses?
No, not in this lifetime, I wouldn't have thought so.
In a 1998 interview with the Daily Record, Brown said that he had warned Oasis about their cocaine use, which was quickly becoming legendary, and that they had ignored the advice. He went on to claim that, perhaps as a result of this, the band were failing to challenge themselves artistically. Brown said, "It's 1998. What's the sense in trying to be the Beatles? Liam is a young kid who has looked up to me, but Oasis are nowhere near the greatest band in the world. They're boring now. They don't have anything to say." Brown, having stuck the knife in, then proceeded to twist it, saying, "Musically, they do nothing for me. The Stone Roses, at their height, were capable of reaching places that Oasis can only dream about." The feud between Oasis and indie rockers Bloc Party began in familiar fashion in 2005, when someone asked Liam Gallagher what he thought of them, and he responded rudely, which was pretty par for the course. Speaking with Uncut in 2007, Bloc Party frontman Kele Okereke trashed the Gallagher brothers in response. He said, "I think Oasis are the most overrated and pernicious band of all time. They have made stupidity hip. They claim to be inspired by the Beatles. They have failed to grasp that the Beatles were about constant change and evolution. Oasis are repetitive Luddites." As fate would have it, Bloc Party were performing at the Rock and Sen Festival in 2009, which Oasis was to have headlined before pulling the plug on their band. And Okereke was happy to make the announcement. He told the crowd, "Oasis have canceled, so I'd like to take this moment to say, that's a shame, isn't it, guys? So I guess by default, we are headlining." Then, as guitarist Russell Lissack began to strum the opening chords to Oasis' Supersonic, Okereke moved in for the death blow. He said, "I'd like to dedicate this next song to anyone who really, really wanted to see those inbred twins."